So, what I'd love to hear is the story of how you guys met. And either one of you can start.
Would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, the day started with my roommate Connie and I going to Palama Beach. And we went there with this, God, I can't think of his first name. His last name was Dixon, but he and Connie were also lifeguards together. But we all worked together at Vandenberg. And after we were out at the beach all day, Dixon said, "How about I take you girls to dinner? We'll go to the club on the base." And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So we went, and there were a bunch of guys up there, obviously, and several of them, asked us to dance and everything, and the one that totally ignored me was my friend here. And I can't remember if it was like 2 days later or whatever. Well, no, I met a friend of his that night, and I did date him a few times. And then
And this was the crazy guy.
that was the crazy guy, crazy Indian.
The Indian.
Yeah, he was. You didn't want to have him drunk at all. But anyway, after I was no longer seeing him, your dad went to the club one night and got a little bit drunk, enough to be able to have enough oomph to call me. He was very shy, so he called and we talked forever. And did you come down that night that you called?
I called, and it was actually kind of late in the evening when I called.
It took you a while to get drunk.
I didn't get drunk. I just had a few drinks of courage. and I called her, and I was going to set up a date with her and everything. And she says, "Well, I'm not doing anything right now. Why don't you come on over?"
Mom.
I know, wasn't I risque?
So, wait, let me stop you right there because you said that you guys spoke on the phone for quite a while.
We did.
What'd you guys talk about? Do you remember?
I honestly can't remember, Rob. It must have been good because I asked him to come down.
I think part of it was because she was dating a friend of mine, one that I worked with all the time, one that was in my barracks close by to where I was staying. I felt kind of funny about first off asking her, afraid that I might, get this other gentleman pissed off, or my
Well,
friend.
I wasn't dating him anymore.
No, I know, but just the idea of it.
The guy code, previous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we talked a little bit about that, I remember. And I talked a little bit about, meeting her sometime and everything like that. And that's when she, after a while of talking, she says, "Well, why don't you come on over and we can talk here?"
And
So-
we did. We talked all night long.
We watched the sun come up the next morning, still talking
Yeah.
about everything. Likes, dislikes, personalities, friends, family,
Yeah.
everything in the world you can think about.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember she had the TV going in the background.
How do you remember that?
And we would stop for a minute and look at the TV, and we'd say, "What show is this?" And then an hour or so later we'd look back and there's another totally show on, in the wee morning hours, and we never could figure out what was on TV.
Well, we weren't really
But
watching it.
but we both had to go to work the next morning.
That was a very long day, as I recall.
But we met at the barbecue over at Connie's house prior to that time.
at Connie's house, that was my house too.
Well, I mean your apartment.
Yeah,
Because remember, that's when I made the barbecue sauce.
Yeah,
That was
I know.
before we started going together, really.
yeah, it was. I guess I was still. That was when I was still seeing Chris. I guess, but that was an interesting story. I mean, I didn't really ever barbecue with my family or anything, and Connie and I had invited a few of the guys down just to have a barbecue. Well, I had all the meat and everything. When he says, barbecue sauce? I said, I don't have any barbecue sauce. And he said, can I look in your cupboards? I said, sure, go ahead. So he started pulling things out of the cupboard and out of the refrigerator, and before I knew it, he had this fabulous tasting barbecue sauce that he used on the steak. So he was the hit of the day. No kidding. So, yeah.
I think part of it was too that Alice was, because coming from a military family, she enjoyed doing dinners or having guys from the base that were apart from their families come together. Because she cooked like a Thanksgiving dinner one time and had like our whole flight practically down there for dinner at her house.
Yeah. Oh, I came by that naturally because my mother used to do that. When my sister Carol's 10 years older than I am, and she worked in, this is when I was still living in Maine, and she worked in Portland, so, and she also was a member of the YWCA, and they did a lot of things with the military, dances and stuff like that. So my mother said, why don't you bring a couple of guys home for Thanksgiving, somebody that can't be home with their folks. So we always had extras at the Thanksgiving table or any Sunday table, really. So I came by it naturally, I guess. But it was fun to have them around.
So after your first long night, you guys had just talked about anything and everything, watched the sun rise.
Yeah.
You realize you both have to go to work the next morning. So what happened next? Like what was the next thing between you two?
Well, he invited me out for dinner.
That next night, or was it a few nights
I think it was
later?
a few nights
A
later.
few nights later, yeah.
Yeah. And we went to a place, I'll never forget the name of it, I don't know why, but it was called the Cleaver Room.
Yeah.
And the menu was painted on a cutting board.
It was like
A
a wooden
wooden-
cleaver.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was
Oh.
like a little hatchet, like a cleaver, and the menu was on the actual, like a large cleaver. Wooden.
But anyway, it was
in Lompoc.
It was in Lompoc. Yeah, it was really, just a nice, quiet evening. We just went to dinner and then went home.
Yeah.
And then he just was around a lot after that.
And then we had the Far Western Tavern.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Far Western Tavern in a little town called Guadalupe. And
Excuse me for interrupting just a second. I had been there a few times before with Mother and Oscar. They took me there. That was one of Oscar's favorite places. He used to go up there periodically. And the original building, before they had their fire, it had all the cowhide curtains over the windows. They raised all their own beef and everything. And it was fabulous steaks in there and everything. And they had this old-timey bar that was really, really neat looking.
it was old, too.
Yeah.
It was really old.
And so one of the times I asked her, I said, you want to go? It was in the afternoon. I think it was like on a Saturday or something. I don't remember because we were both out of work.
Right.
And I said, you want to go for a couple of drinks at the Far Western Tavern? She said, sure. So we jumped in my Bronco and we drove over there. And we had a round of frozen margaritas,
Right.
and I gave the waitress a $10 bill, and she brought us change back for a 20.
That was back in the days where you could buy a frozen strawberry margarita for less than $5.
It wasn't strawberry, that was regular margarita.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. But anyways, so I called her back to the table and told her, I said, you gave me too much money back. And she was so impressed with my honesty that she went and told the bartender. And the next round of drinks that we ordered, it's like he made a pitcher full, and he filled up our glasses, and he says, you guys need to drink those up. He says, I made a little bit extra, and he says, this is on the house type thing. And so I think we had like 2 or 3 extra drinks that we didn't have to pay for. And
Which I shouldn't have had anyway, because
and then
I'm
we
not a drinker.
and then we ordered one more round of drinks, and it was almost the same thing all over again. And I didn't think either one of us were going to walk. I remember you got up to go to the bathroom, and you were a little tipsy.
No, I wasn't.
But it was there again, we sat and we talked, and they had an old piano in there. Remember? Or
Yeah.
Was it an organ? Oh, it was an old
No.
piano.
Yeah,
It was really neat. Really neat old bar.
yeah, it was. That was a crazy, and the worst part of it was when we got ready to leave, I had on, that was back in the days of the mini skirts, and I had a very short dress on. And I thought, how am I going to get up into that Bronco?
Ladylike.
Ladylike. So he was very kind and very gentlemanly, and he helped me up. He lifted me up into the seat, so I didn't expose anything that I didn't want exposed. So that's what began it all, and I think probably all of his friends. We used to go out in his Bronco, he and his buddies, and I'd be out there. We'd try tackling these hills that looked like they were yay high, and up and down hills. Who could do this? I kept thinking, it's going to roll over. It's going to roll over.
What was that day we went to that picnic?
Yeah, that's the day I'm
Is that
talking
the day
about.
you're talking?
Yeah.
Because I remember we got off graveyard shift and we went out there early so we could reserve a table. I don't even remember what park it was out there now. Do
I
you
don't
remember?
know. It was out towards Fillmore, I think.
No. It was up near Santa Maria somewhere, out in the hills up there.
Santa Maria?
Yeah, because we had the guys from the base. We went out there because I remember a couple of us crashed on the table until everybody else came out there to reserve the picnic space. But when everybody got out there, and that was my thing, there was a lot of open hills and everything like that, so I was giving everybody rides in my Bronco, going four-wheeling up in the hills and around the trees and down and around and everything.
Yeah. And I don't know why, at some point, it was in downtown Lompoc. I was driving his Bronco. I don't know why I was driving his Bronco, but some of his buddies saw him and he said, "Oh no, Lewis is in love. She's driving his Bronco."
That's how
Yeah,
they
'cause
knew.
Nobody got to drive my Bronco.
I'm not sure why he ever let me do that, except I think he knew I was a good driver.
She was a very good driver.
Yeah.
So how long was it from, let's say, your first night, talking overnight, watching the sunrise, to when you guys were finding yourselves in Vegas?
Well, actually, the day I went to the beach and ended up seeing your dad for the first time was on Memorial Day. We had gone out to the beach on Memorial Day. And for Christmas that year, we were down at his dad's house. And I remember that I had asked him, he had asked what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, "You're going to laugh, but what I really want is a cast iron skillet. And he just kind of laughed. And so when Christmas morning came, I opened, there were 2 packages there. And I opened one and it was a cast iron skillet, but it had a watch in it, a really pretty watch. And then there was another one, it was a bigger skillet, and it had a diamond in it. So that was his way of proposing to me.
Well, I did do a kind of ask at
You-
that time, a more
well,
formal proposal.
Yeah, well, and you had called my folks and asked for their blessing,
Yes.
which impressed my father to no end. So
You hadn't met them at this point, had you?
No.
no,
Okay.
no, he hadn't met them. He didn't meet them till after we were married. But so I'm not sure why we decided on the date or anything, but well, he was getting out of the military. He was ready to go home, and we drove down to Oxnard. We had rented an apartment, and his oldest brother, Bill, came over that night and said, "You two can't sleep together tonight. You're not married." He said, "I think we need to go to Vegas." So his older brother and his wife, Glee, went with us to Vegas. And that was, we went on the 21st of January, but we were married on the 22nd of January in the little chapel of the flowers.
So you guys hadn't, I mean, was Uncle Bill the one that actually made it Vegas, or had you guys discussed Vegas as a possibility before then?
We knew that we couldn't have, I mean, we would have liked to have had a ceremony somewhere right in Oxnard, but his mom and dad had been divorced, and at that point, you really couldn't put them in the same room without a fight. So we figured to make things nice and enjoyable, we decided Vegas was our choice. So, and we had decided ahead of time, because I know my mother sent me, she asked me what I was going to wear, and I said, I haven't even thought about it. Well, a couple of days later, I got an envelope with a check in it. She said, I want you to make sure you have a new dress for your wedding. So I bought it was light blue.
Yeah.
I kept it for years, and for some reason, I guess after moving as much as we've moved, that I decided it really could go to somebody else. So anyway, but it was a nice ceremony. That Reverend Whitehead was the pastor's name that married us. So it was a good day.
Yeah. And actually, I was not due to get out of the military until like the end of April, close to May. But because I was working at the police department part-time, I was able to get out of the military 3 months early. It was something they called Operation Bootstrap. They were hurting for law enforcement officers at the time, and if you could show proof that you were signing up or working for a police department, you could get out of the military 3 months early. So I was able to get out in January rather than in April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that started it all.
All right, so we are good to go here. So let's start
Okay.
with.
Hang on just a second.
Oh.
I think the toilet might be hung up.
Oh, okay.